Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, last week I did a poll on different Facebook groups about which deck profile you guys want to see first on the decks that were introduced in the AL4 booster set. And to my quite surprise, it was a very tight race between the first and second place. I anticipated the deck that won, and you can obviously guess because of the title of this video and the thumbnail that you clicked on. But of course, Shadow Paladin was the most requested and clicked deck with at least 45 votes across 4 different Vanguard pages. But the second place, with at least 44 votes, was to Mandala Lord. And it was quite a surprise to me actually, because I didn't anticipate it to be that much of a request for Murakumo. And in hindsight I can understand it because of the recent tops in the early 2 weeks of the set in Japan, and a lot of people start playing it and seeing how strong it is. So I can understand why people want to see it, and as why Senbaku, that's the last one that's voted, that's with the least votes, is not that high, is because we already seen the decks on Twitter and all the pages, what you can do, but not necessarily a Mandala Lord focused deck. So I think that's the reason why it was almost as requested as Shadow Paladin. So yeah, what I'm going to do is first place was Shadow Paladin, second place was Mandala, third place was Pale Moon, and after that I'm going to talk about Dark Irregulars, and lastly I said the fifth deck is going to be in Senbaku. That's basically the hybrid build that we've seen in many tops, and what my take on the deck is. And I'm very happy that Pale Moon is the third place, because that is honestly my most favorite deck of this set, with all the different combos and the plays you can make. So I'm very happy that I'm going to can talk about that deck a lot sooner than I anticipated, because I thought that maybe was the last one's going to be requested. So yeah, thank you guys for voting on the poll on all the different Facebook pages. And maybe we're going to do this again in the future with other supports or other multiple videos that I don't know which one I want to cover first. So, but yeah, without any further ado, let's go talk about Shadow Paladin, because this is Shadow Paladin deck profile. If you're only interested in a certain specific topic on the deck profile, then go to one of these timestamps. Otherwise, keep watching to learn about what kind of cards I run in my deck list. In this Shadow Paladin deck, we run a total of 8 grade 3s, 11 grade 2s, 14 grade 1s and 17 grade 0s. For our grade 3 lineup, we run, of course, 4 copies of Phantom Blaster Dragon, as he is our main finisher card, and also a very good pressure card with his free damage skill when we're able to rewrite a grade 3. We also run 2 copies of the Dark Dictator. This is just a solid grade 3 to sit on as a first right target, or maybe late game stages because of his continuous power skill. And we also run 2 copies of the Dark Mage Vanguard card as a good solid rearguard replenisher for the resources that we need with Phantom Blaster Dragon. For grade 2s, we run of course 4 copies of Bless the Dark. It's just a solid grade 2 rearguard, but also an amazing grade 2 Vanguard card when we're able to use its skill to be able to get a twin drive. We also run 4 copies of Darkness Maiden Mecha. We use her skill to be able to draw more cards, but mainly necessary to activate Black Sage Charon's skill. We also run 3 copies of Blaster Rapier in order to have more hit pressure and to have a nice combo with Blaster Dagger. More on that later in the video. For grade 1s, we run 4 copies of Skull Witch in the main. It's a great card to filter our deck with all the unnecessary cards, but also to gain more rear guards to be able to sacrifice them with Phantom Blaster Dragon. We also run 4 copies of Blaster Javelin. It's a great rearguard to be able to draw more cards for only a counterblast. Great skill. We also run 2 copies of Blaster Dagger to have more on hit pressure and more retire options. And we run 4 copies of Black Sage Charon to be able to countercharge in combination with the Dark Dictator or with a Darkness Maiden Mecha. For a grade 0 lineup, we run of course our starter and 4 heals, 8 crits and 4 draw PGs. Making it a total, as I stated, 8 grade 3s, 11 grade 2s, 14 grade 1s and 17 grade 0s. Unlike Royals, this deck does have 2 combos you can play. One focused around Charon with the Dark Dictator or Mecha, and the other one is the Blaster column. Let's first take a look at Charon. His skill demands that he is called to the field through a skill. Luckily we run 2 units that can superior call grade 1 to the field. Both the Dark Dictator and Mecha skill cost a counterblast, meaning if we call Charon, we get their skill for free. In the Dark Dictator's case, we get a free retire and 5k on Charon. In Mecha's case, we get a free draw and 5k on Mecha. Both results in a 5k power increase on our field and an overall +1 to our card advantage over our opponent. Mecha gives us an outright classic +1 And the Dark Dictator does a field -1 on our opponent. Now let's take a look at the other combo in this deck, the Blaster column. As the name suggests, it's a column built with Blaster units, Blaster Rapier and Blaster Dagger to be precise. If we look at these cards, they both have an on-hit Vanguard effect that let us retire a unit. And in most cases, hit Vanguard effects aren't that great if you have too many of them, because you can hit the Vanguard only that many times. But because these units are a grade 1 and a grade 2, we can build one giant pressure column that has a big potential if it hits. And if we can build this column and we're sitting at a Phantom Blaster, well, then we already fulfilled Blaster Rapier's first skill and the column is a solid 22k column. That's a great number. Granted, against Force this will not be your main focus. Yeah, getting those extra retire off if it hits is awesome, but not necessary, because Blaster Dark, the Dark Dictator and Phantom Blaster have enough retire options to deal with the current Force clans. This combo is highly effective against Exo clans and to some regards Protect clans. Their base power is 12k, meaning 22k is perfect. Also, don't forget we can up the pressure with Force markers, but more on that later in the video. Let's first talk about resources. This deck uses 3 types of resources: damage, soul and rearguards. Most of you are familiar with the concept of retiring your own rearguards to gain an immense power up in Shadow Paladin, but with the first Shadow Paladin reboot set, this concept returns to the clan in the form of Phantom Blaster Dragon. He gives us the option to retire 3 of our own rearguards to get a power increase with a crit, but also to destroy 3 of our opponent's units. So in total we don't minus on the board and we gain a power increase for a cost of a counterblast. What also makes this card pretty nasty is the fact that we can create a weak field against our opponent's strong field, and in that case the retired unit's value is shifted in our favor. To sustain the fuel for this card we can use Skull Witch in the main or Dark Mage Bahatmakar card to create sacrifice pieces. Or we can generate more cards with Darkness Made of Mecha and Blessed Javelin, but the cards will cost even more resources to do so. Speaking of them, let's talk Counterblast. We've got a lot of units that uses Counterblast as resources. 6 in total. The Dark Dictator and Mecha have very similar skills in which they both call a unit and both add 5k power to the field. Only one draws a card and the other retires one of our opponent's field. Depending on your situation, one is more favorable than the other. Blessed Javelin is another card that draws us a card for a Counterblast, and Blessed Dark and Blessed Rapier are in the retire for a Counterblast camp. If we're missing pieces, then the draw effects become more favorable, and if our opponents have combo pieces on the field, then the retire effects become more favorable. We can run so many Counterblast units because, unlike Royal Paladin, we have a countercharge option in the form of Black Sage Charon. But unlike a normal countercharge card, to trigger its effect, you need to call this card with the card's ability. So the only way to use this card is to call it with the Dark Dictator or Mecha skill, resulting in the fact that you can generate Counterblast. Their skill costs a Counterblast, so keep in mind you can only make those 2 skills free if you have a Charon in your hand. Also, yes, you can call this card with Dark Mage Bahatmakar, but that's completely random, so you can't really depend on it to generate Counterblast. Now let's look at our soul. We have Phantom Blaster Dragon that uses a grade 3 to shoot at damage, nothing special here. We have Dark Mage Bahatmakar that uses soul to call a unit from the top deck that will be retired at the end of the turn. And we have of course Black Sage Charon that generates Counterblast for a soul. As you can see, soul won't be an issue for this deck, because Phantom Blaster fixes its own soul by just rewriting, and a normal right chain will give us more than enough soul for Charon and Bahatmakar. But just in case for that extra soul, when needed, we run 2 copies of Blaster Dagger. This deck's main gameplay focuses around retiring your opponent's rearguard and keeping them on their toes with high pressure attacks like with the Blaster column, Blaster Dark's Twin Drive and Phantom Blaster Dragon's crit attack. Try to use Nemain as soon as possible because she helps filling out the deck and you don't want to draw multiple copies of her. Use her in combination with Bahatmakar to generate free sacrifice units for Phantom Blaster Dragon. Also, only use Blaster Rapier, Blaster Dark and Dark Dictator's retire skill when you want to either clear the field for Blaster Dark's second skill or when your opponent has a unit that you need to destroy. If it's just a matter of retiring your opponent's unit to deny them any kind of offensive play, then use Phantom Blaster Dragon's skill because he can retire 3 units for the cost of 1 Counterblast. This deck has no good counter against the Protect land because unlike Kagero, they don't have a guard restricted attack, and unlike Royals, they can't really generate high columns. But they can generate a lot of pressure with their different skills by forcing your opponent to even guard early attacks they could normally take. You can force them to guard against the Twin Drive Bluster Dart. Also, the Bluster column is an attack most people don't want to let through because it results in a loss of 2 rear guards for them. By forcing your opponent to guard these attacks early on will result that we can use Phantom Blaster Dragon's second skill to shoot free damage. The key to win against Protect Clan is to utilize this skill to its fullest. A thing to keep in mind is that all our retire skills focus around that our opponent chooses a unit. So if he has a unit like Promise Daughter on the field, they don't have to retire a unit. This is a blessing as a curse for us, because we want to use Phantom Blaster's second skill as much as possible. So when they have this unit on the field, then that unit instantly becomes our #1 target to attack. We then basically can ignore the Vanguard for that moment in the game. You can see our retire effect as a problem that we can't choose for ourselves, but this can in fact be a blessing in disguise. Of course, aside from the obvious downside that a card like Promise Daughter exists, there is a silver lining. In normal case of retire cards, we always choose the card that will give us the most trouble. And in case of our Shadow Paladin cards, our opponents will choose the card. They will have the least problems with to lose. For those observers among us, both case a player can read the other player's tactic or strategy. In case that we can choose, our opponent has a chance to read us, but in the case of Shadow Paladin, we have a chance to read our opponent. So by looking at the cards they drive check, seeing which card they retire and how long they think about the matter can give us so many information about their hand, tactic and overall moral in the game. So keep paying attention to those little details when playing with this deck. Now, for alternate options, there aren't really a lot to go through because Shadow Paladin got a lot of trash cards in this first set or cards that need another card to combo with. You can change the grade 3 lineup depending on your preference. You can even run 4 Phantom Blaster Dragons and 4 the Dark Dictators, but I don't recommend another grade 3 than the grade 3s that are already running in the deck. You can replace Blaster Rapier for either Witch of Calamity Emmer or Tragic Knight Cav Bat if you want to have higher magic number columns against Force Clans. If you replace Blaster Rapier, you can then also replace Blaster Dagger with Nightmare Painter, but I only recommend replacing Blaster Dagger if you're removing Blaster Rapier from the deck, because otherwise you might have some issue getting the free blasters on the field for Blaster Rapier skill. We've seen that this deck wants us to pressure our opponent in forcing to guard as much as possible, and to remove any kind of threat on the field by attacking the rear guards or killing them with retire effects. The focus lies on Phantom Blaster Dragon's second skill to get free damage, especially against Protect Lands. It can filter the deck with the help of the main and has access to enough 2 cards combos to overwhelm our opponent. Also, don't forget to try reading your opponent when they need to choose to retire a rearguard. Biggest weakness to the deck are cards like Promise Daughter that can be chosen but can be retired. Classes that have access to these cards can easily cope with the weakened pressure that comes from the lack of retire skills. And with that we've covered Shadow Paladin. As you can see, the deck is very versatile and very destructive in their high pressure attacks with on-hit effects, retire effects and overall Phantom Blaster Dragon with his free damage skill and also his crit gain power skills. And as stated, the deck doesn't really have a defining end game because it doesn't have any kind of guard restriction for protect lands, but its retire on rearguards is very effective against other force clans and especially Exo clans. But with the free damage shooting skills and Bluster Dark and all those on hit effects, you can see how you can make an end game scenario against a clan as Oracle Think Tank. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of this deck profile or Shadow Paladin in general in the comments down below. And as always, hit the subscribe button and the bell button down below to be updated to our new videos, and especially if you're interested in the upcoming deck profiles on the other decks of AL4 Strongest Team. I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one.